I know. I don't know how long you've been waiting for this movie. I've been waiting for this movie for, life. But first I want to thankfully thank the sponsor of this video. This video is brought to you by Dr. Squatch. Dr. Squatch is changing the way men approach hygiene. Their shower soap leaves you feeling refreshed, feeling clean. And that clean is a natural clean. Their soap doesn't contain any of the harmful chemicals a lot of other soap companies use. Again, they sent me soap, but I already buy their soap because I love it. Even after all these months, pine tar is probably still my favorite of the scents. But they don't just have soap, they have shampoo, conditioner, beard oil, which is, the scent is crushed pine. Apparently I like smelling like trees. It's a Washingtonian thing. That's how we roll here. So click the link below. New customers get 20% off of orders $20 or more by using promo code DSCJOHNS. And thank you once again to Dr. Squatch for sponsoring this video. I do appreciate it. And now, the time has come. So Dune is directed by Denis Villeneuve, and it's a retelling of the story of Dune. Dune, that classic sci-fi novel that's hailed as the most important sci-fi novel of all time. Dune, that classic 80s sci-fi movie that's classic yet messy, but I love it. I don't care. So keeping it vague, the story of Dune, it is pretty much Game of Thrones, galactic Game of Thrones. I was gonna say Game of Thrones in space, but it doesn't take place in space. It takes place on other planets. So it's no more in space than any story that takes place on any other world. Doesn't make sense. So galactic Game of Thrones, it deals with houses and alliances and backstabbing and schemes. In this world of galactic Game of Thrones, there's this desert planet called Arrakis that has the spice. And the spice is the most valuable resource in the galaxy. So House Atreides is essentially called upon to go to the planet Arrakis. And then you just start seeing the walls closing in around House Atreides. And then schemes and loyalties and really evil floaty bastards, and holy man, he was menacing. And the performances in this movie, like, across the board, everyone was great. You know they're going to be. It's a stacked cast with great actors. In this day and age, you generally get two things with that. One, a really boring floaty head poster that looks really generic. But you gotta fit all the heads on there because it's a stacked cast. But also two, the performances in the movie are epic. And although it is a stacked cast, some you see more than others, like Zendaya, barely in the movie, because it is part one of two. They divided the story in two, and this is only the first of two movies that hopefully happen. Javier Bardem, you see more of him than Zendaya, but I like what I saw. Josh Brolin's great. Jason Momoa, I thought there were some people who were like, whoa, Jason, but I don't think he fits. But I thought his character brought a lot of humanity and heart to the movie that was necessary, and it landed. Also, you get all those loving Jason Momoa body pats you can handle. But for the ones the movie really rests on, like the movie's on their shoulders and you're with them for most of the time, Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides, and Lady Perfection herself playing Lady Jessica, that would be Rebecca Ferguson. The two of them, it really is their movie. Also, Stellan Skarsgård, again, wish I saw more of him. Gonna see more of him in part two. But this dude, every scene he's in, scene stealer. There's not a lot of people he's stealing scenes from, but dude, menacing isn't really the word. Just ruthless son of a bitch. Every scene. The kind of ruthless dick that comes from you being the wealthiest piece of shit in that galaxy. But really the treat, the epic that this movie's built around is the audio-visual odyssey that you're in for. It's like every shot, Denis Villeneuve was like, let's make this the greatest looking scene in existence. Like from when the movie starts out, you see the spice harvesters on Dune on planet Arrakis, you're like, this looks way too good. And it doesn't stop. And from there it goes, and oh, also, by the way, with all these epic visual shots, can we have Hans Zimmer work in the music to create this, how to phrase it? Give me a second. Orgasmic audio-visual odyssey of galactic proportions. There you go. That's what this is. Dune. If you look up Dune in the dictionary, it doesn't say this yet, but it should say orgasmic audio-visual experience of galactic proportions. Even you match up the scenes from the 80s Dune movie, it's like, there's no real comparison, you know? Like, this just looks so much larger in scale, epic in scope. And it's not just like, oh, the visuals are great and that's that. No, the visuals are great and that enhances the tension in certain scenes, the tragedy in other scenes. When you're dealing with a remake, or a retelling of a story rather, since this isn't really a remake of the 80s movie, it's a retelling of the Book of Dune, I totally get it, just terminology. When you're doing that, you have to justify the movie's existence, you know? It's like, oh, if we already have a Dune movie, why does this exist? And on every level, it justifies its existence. And that's really what I wanted from this movie, you know? You have these things in your head, or at least I did, where I had these thoughts of like, if a Dune movie was made now, how epic would that be? And I can't say I thought of anything more epic than this movie. I thought it did a good job catching you up to speed with the politics of the galaxy and the standing of certain houses and who hates who and why. And that comes from the fact that it's longer than the old Dune movie, but also only half the story. You know, they're taking their time with it. I will say it probably would have served it well to be an HBO Max series or something like that. I think a series, Dune lends itself to a series, but we got a movie, all right. But if you're matching up the time, the story of Dune's gonna be about 5 hours if it's 2.5 hours per half. I loved this movie. I can't wait to see part 2, but my enjoyment and how this movie stands and sticks with me hinges on whether or not part 2 is gonna happen. Part 2 is not officially announced. It's just hope it happens if this movie does well. And you feel it. This doesn't feel like a complete movie. You know, like when you're dealing with a part 1 of something, part 1 of 2 or part 1 of 3, you can deal with it a couple different ways. You got It Chapter 1, right? So It Chapter 1 felt like its own movie, and if Chapter 2 happened, great, but if it didn't, you still had It Chapter 1, which felt complete in and of itself. Then you have Lord of the Rings, where Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring is part 1 of 3, and it has that cutoff that you feel it with that cutoff at the end. Like, whoa, it just kind of ends. But if you look at the beats of Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring, it does still have its 3 acts. You know, you have your intro, then you have Act 2, and then they go to the end fight in Act 3. Then after that climactic end fight, then you get your cutoff going, no, this isn't the end of the story, there's more to come. Then there's Dune, where Dune doesn't feel like it has 3 acts. It's Act 1 going into Act 2, end of the movie. Hope part 2 happens so we can see the conclusion, but it might not if part 1 doesn't do well, and that blows my mind. But that's the tricky thing. I feel like I'm talking about half of a movie in this review. It absolutely feels like half a movie because it is half of a movie. It's only half the story. That's how it's supposed to be, but now I'm here left reviewing this movie going, well, if part 2 never happens, would I revisit part 1 again? Because it just feel like a waste of time. It'd be cinematic blue balls that I just don't want to experience. I don't know, but as of right now, because I'm just in an optimistic mood, I'm gonna go ahead and be that optimist and say, well, part 2 will happen. This is just part 1. And if I'm looking at part 1 and that's pointing to part 2, we're gonna have ourselves a fucking epic Dune epic. I could have phrased that better. I'm not refilming that. Anyhow, if you're a Dune fan, if it's your first time visiting Dune, go for it, go watch it. It is a bit of a slow burn in that Denis Villeneuve kind of way, but that's kind of what he does. But you're in for a visual treat here, man. You're in for a movie that's not a movie that you watch, it's a world you experience. That is to say, for me, this Dune movie was one of my favorite cinematic experiences in the theater this year, and it is awesome-tacular. I'm gonna be honest with you. If Dune Part 2 doesn't happen, I'm gonna lose it. Alright, so Dune, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.